Glorified be thy name, O Lord my God. I beseech thee by thy power that hath encompassed all created things, and by thy sovereignty.
I can't hear anything anybody's saying. What, did anything happen to the sound?
No, we're all hearing it.
We're hearing you, David.
No, I just don't hear it.
Is your mute on?
Just a second.
No,
Mute.
No,
Write it on the screen.
he's not muted.
Maybe
No, I
we should
didn't.
mute everybody.
No, he's not
Yeah, we
muted.
should mute
speaker.
everybody. That's a good idea.
May I continue?
Why don't you start again, hang away from the beginning?
Sounds good. Glorified be thy name, O Lord my God. I beseech thee by thy power that hath encompassed all created things, and by thy sovereignty that hath transcended the entire creation, and by thy word which was hidden in thy wisdom, and whereby thou didst create thy heaven and thy earth, both to enable us to be steadfast in our love for thee and in our obedience to thy pleasure, and to fix our gaze upon thy face and celebrate thy glory. Empower us then, O my God, to spread abroad thy signs among thy creatures, and to guard thy faith in thy realm. Thou hast ever existed independently of the mention of any of thy creatures, and wilt remain as thou hast been forever and ever. In thee I have placed my whole confidence. Unto thee I have turned my face. To the cord of thy loving providence I have clung, and towards the shadow of thy mercy I have hastened. Cast me not as one disappointed out of thy door, O my God, and withhold not from me thy grace. For thee alone do I seek. No God is there beside thee, the ever forgiving, the most bountiful. Praise be to thee, O thou who art the beloved of them that have known thee. Baha'u'llah.
Thank you. Lovely. Okay, folks. So we're going to throw you in the deep end of the pool tonight. It's the world of imagination. I left you with a question at the end of last class. Who was the Bedouin who had the temerity to quiz the Prophet Muhammad on the fundamentals of his revelation? Muhammad informed his companions that it was the angel Gabriel. How could that be? Have you come up with any explanations of this mysterious, even miraculous event? Okay, the floor is open. What did you come up with? Jennifer doesn't get to say because her answer is already right. She sent me an email about it. Everybody else, what are you coming up with?
Are you going to share Jennifer's answer, Mark?
Maybe she can answer after everybody else, if she feels like it. Anybody else? How is it that we have a story with the angel Gabriel appearing to human beings? Any idea what the mechanics are of that? How do they explain that reality? I see Durham has his hand up. Let's go ahead, Durham.
I don't think there is scientific explanation to this, first. Second, it's part of the similitude that we talk about. I mentioned last time that this person was a vehicle in the form of a human being to convey the questions that Gabriel wanted to ask Muhammad. Hence, Muhammad will explain what is Islam. So this happened in many locations in the history of, in Quran itself, many locations when an angel is represented in a form of a human being. So that's how I look at it.
Okay, so we're going to talk about how it is that Muslims are okay with that. Anybody else have a thought?
Mark, I think of this, in comparative perspective. The Buddha or any manifestation of God can create a lesson plan for whoever's listening, and that lesson plan can have many forms. Muhammad wanted to teach something about the archangel Gabriel and the source of the word of God and the nature of his revelation. So in the context of how the veil is very thin when a manifestation of God is on the earth. And so things that are not ordinary can happen. And the manifestations of God can make them happen. As part of their, if they're called a divine educator, they can create a plan, a lesson that's visible and that is memorable and that goes down, through the ages. That's not an explanation, but it's just a pattern, a description of this has happened before. Deja vu all over again, from the comparative religions perspective.
Okay, thank you. And I have Jack and then Belinda and Ingrid.
Okay, let the others go first. I'll come back.
Okay, Belinda. You're muted at this point, Belinda, sorry. There you
Okay,
go.
David and I both have something, but I was reminded of an incident. I can't quite place it. I think it's Abraham, and some people showed up, and I think they were given a meal or something, and they had a conversation. But those two men were angels.
Sounds familiar.
Maybe Harold will remember. David might remember that incident better than I do, but it's part of the story of Abraham.
Oh, well, what I was going to say was that in Judaism, and I believe this comes from the Kabbalah, insofar as revelation is concerned, the Jewish mystics considered that that all of Israel was in exile, and that the one who was waiting, for, I guess, revelation to come through was shaking off, the shaking off. And it has been described, the shaking off, as the one who, she is female, by the way, through whom revelation will come through. And this was the whole thing, that she considered herself to be in exile and waiting for that event.
Okay, I think we had Ingrid and now Jennifer and then Jack.
Yeah, I remember reading a story about Baha'u'llah when he was in Akka, and one of the believers from Iran had come to visit him, and through the window of the prison, the pilgrim saw Baha'u'llah beckoning him to come into the prison, and he thought, well, gee, how am I going to get into the prison? But Baha'u'llah kept insisting, come. And so this pilgrim was able to go through the prison, and he saw the guards, but the guards did not see him. And when he got into Baha'u'llah's presence, Baha'u'llah said, I've closed the eyes of the guards. So as I think Harold or someone was saying, a manifestation can do what he likes. So in Muhammad's case, he perhaps opened the eyes of his companions so they could see the angel.
Nice. Oh, nice idea. Okay, Jennifer.
Should I give you my answer?
Yeah,
Or do you want Jack to go
just
first?
the short version though, not the 2-page one.
Okay, the short version is Ibn Arabi would have said that the followers saw the angel Gabriel visiting Mohammed in the imaginal realm, which could be either through visions or dreams, but in the imaginal realm.
Okay. Jack, do you have anything further to add to this?
Yeah, these are all great, great answers. And Belinda, I was, as the others were speaking, I was listening with one ear and trying to find the Abraham story in the book of Genesis, but I couldn't find it. But it's definitely there, and the people that entertained him and fed him were angels. So my understanding of this story is, okay, what is the point of having the angel Gabriel to teach the companions of the prophet when he could have done it himself? He could have easily done that himself. So I think part of the moral of this story is to reinforce the belief in the supernatural powers that Harold alluded to, and to reinforce the belief in angels, which is, of course, one of the pillars of the Islamic faith, right? The belief in angels. So I think this story reinforces this reinforcement of two things, of the supernatural powers. And I think Jennifer's correct that these sorts of things can take place in the Ilami Mithal, if I'm saying it right. Am I saying it right there, Lam? Ilami Mithal, that imaginal realm. And so for me, that's sort of what it emphasizes, and that the manifestations of God, they hold the creative powers in their hand. Like, remember the story of the Bob who was praying down by the riverside in Maku when he was supposed to be in his prison cell, and the governor, the prison warden, was so perturbed that he went back and was going to chastise the guards for letting the Bob out. Do you remember that story from Dawnbreakers? And because he had seen him praying down by the river. And so obviously this story, and of course this incident with the Bob changed the whole attitude of the warden toward the Bob. He became submissive, he was perturbed, and in effect became a believer in him. So I think it's to tell us, to reinforce the belief in angels and in the supernatural, that the prophets of God are able to bend the laws of physics to their will.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I look at it anyway.
Okay. Well, let's jump ahead with my notes and see what Ibn Arabi has to say.
Mark, just
yeah,
before you
sorry.
do, Paul.
And Brigadi, Paul had his hand up. I didn't notice. Sorry.
I was just going to follow up on that thought about the Bob's appearance on the banks of the river, because at the same time, or within a few weeks or a month of that happening, there was a very miraculous event that occurred here in our part of the world at Niagara Falls. There's only been one time in known history when Niagara Falls stopped flowing. And it happened just about that same time. I tried to research it as much as I could to find out the exact date that episode might have happened with the Bob. I can't pin it down to more than the springtime of, the year escapes me now, but just at the same time, the river stopped flowing. So the consequence of the Niagara stopping like that was taken by the population as a sign from God. And there was an article in one of the local newspapers that I happened to dig out, and it showed that, the attendance at churches for months later just peaked, right? Because everybody said this is a sign. And of course, this was at the time that the Millerites were active, and millenarianism was active in North America. So it was taken as a sign from God. And I don't know if there's a connection in the spiritual world between these two things happening on opposite sides of the globe, but you know, just could be.
Okay, so here's Ibn Arabi's explanation. As he reads the hadith, the angel Gabriel imaginalized himself within the physical world. And not only that, he imaginalized himself to such a degree that Muhammad's companions were also able to see his body and hear his words. So that leaves us with an important question. What does the verb to imaginalize actually mean? Before we answer that, let's consider another example, this time from the Quran. Mary, the mother of Jesus, also experienced a similar encounter with an angel before she conceived her son. Here is the account as it appears in the 19th surah of the Quran. Oh, let me see who is actually here tonight. Just looking at my list. Ah, Carolyn, how about you? You didn't have a chance to read last time?
The first paragraph?
Yes, please. Oh, let me get it up on the screen. Sorry, I'm just a little dilatory. Where are we here? Classifying readings. There we go.
Okay. Reading number 1. And remember Mary in the book, when she withdrew from her family to an eastern place, and she veiled herself from them. Then we sent unto her our spirit, and it assumed for her the likeness to Mathathala of a perfect man. She said, I take refuge from thee in the compassionate, if you are reverent. He said, I am but a messenger of thy Lord, to bestow upon thee a pure boy. She said, how shall I have a boy when no man has touched me, nor have I been unchaste? He said, thus shall it be. Thy Lord says, it is easy for me, and it is thus, that we might make him a sign unto mankind, and a mercy from us, and it is a matter decreed. So she conceived him and withdrew with him to a place far off. Study the Quran.
Thank you. So the reference to the messenger here is universally understood by Muslims to be Gabriel. And second, the Quranic term messengers in the plural, Rusul, includes both prophets and angels. In Surah 19, verse 17, Nasser and his team translate tamathala as assuming the likeness of. Abdullah Yusuf Ali chose to render the verb as appeared before her. In Gabriel Said Reynolds' case, he read it as to become incarnate for her. The verb tamathala is derived from the triliteral root mth, which is a single letter, L. This root is one of the two that Ibn Arabi uses to convey his conception of the imagination. The other is KHYL. Okay, so let's see if we've got another reader here. I'm trying to find people who haven't read. How about Danielle? Let me just move this up a bit. Number 2.
Ibn al-Arabi often employs the term misdal, image, as a synonym for imagination. The basic difference between the manner in which he uses the terms is that khayal refers both to the mental faculty known as imagination and the objective world out there known as imagination, whereas mithal is never used for the faculty. The root meaning of mithal is to resemble, to look like, to imitate, to appear in the likeness of. This root is employed much more commonly in the Quran and Hadith than KYL,
For example, the Quran repeatedly speaks about similitudes, matal, and God's striking of similitudes, that is, his explanation of various points by means of imagery and symbolism rather than explicit formulation. Kitik, the Sufi path to knowledge. Ibn Arabi, Metaphysics and Imagination.
Thank you. So, as I read that, it brought to mind Abdu'l-Baha's statement concerning the need for parables. I'm wondering if Lisa might read that one for us. Number 3.
Oh, and I'll unmute. Another asked why the teachings of all religions are expressed largely by parables and metaphors and not in the plain language of the people. Abdu'l-Baha replied, divine things are too deep to be expressed by common words. The heavenly teachings are expressed in parables in order to be understood and preserved for ages to come. When the spiritually minded dive deeply into the ocean of their meaning, they bring to the surface the pearls of their inner significance. There is no greater pleasure than to study God's word with a spiritual mind.
Thank you. So, I'd like to give you 2 more examples from the Quran of this use of the word similitude, which is mithal in Arabic. How about David? Are you available there, David?
I'm very available.
Okay, we got the audio problem solved. You can hear us?
Yes, yes, I did. I plugged my computer into the TV for my master ray, and that silenced everybody.
Okay, gotcha.
Anyway, here we go. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. The similitude of his light is as a niche wherein is a lamp. The lamp is in the glass. The glass is as it were a shining star. This lamp is kindled from a blessed tree, an olive neither of the east nor of the west, whose oil would almost glow forth of itself, though no fire touched it, light upon light. Allah guided unto his light whom he will, and Allah speaketh to mankind in allegories, for Allah is knower of all things. And that's Abdullah Yusuf Ali, The Meaning of the Holy Quran.
Thank you. I wonder, Marie, if you wouldn't mind reading number 5 for us. This is a second verse from the Quran.
Sure. Seest thou not how Allah coineth a similitude? A goodly saying, as a goodly tree, its roots set firm, its branches reaching into heaven, giving its fruit at every season by permission of its Lord. Allah coineth the similitudes for mankind in order that they may reflect. And the similitude of a bad saying is as a bad tree, uprooted from upon the earth, possessing no stability. Abdullah Yusuf Ali, The Meaning of the Holy Quran.
Okay. So probably most of you know that the Bab and Baha'u'llah also use this term similitudes, as Durham was saying earlier, in their writings. Here's an example from the Bab. That's number 6, sorry. Zilda, I think you're here. I think I saw you.
Number 6.
Yeah, sorry, 6, yeah.
Verily hath God created within thyself the similitude of all that he hath fashioned in creation, that thou mayest not be veiled from any effulgence. Verily God hath generated within thy being the entirety of his manifestations. He hath ordained that his home be the heart of his servant. By it the reality of existence shall be recognized, and the fashioner of men be praised. and the bounty of existence pour forth through his ever-flowing pen.
Okay, now, and then we have one sample here from many that we could have taken from Baha'u'llah. Let me see, Jennifer, how about you? That would be number 7.
For the attempt of the advancement to conceive the signs of the uncreated is as the stirring of the drop before the tumult of thy billowing oceans. Nay, forbid it, O my God, that I should thus venture to describe thee, for every similitude and comparison must pertain to what is essentially created by thee. How can then such similitude and comparison ever befit thee, or reach up onto thyself?
So similitudes are good, but are limited. They can't reach God in his essence. Nothing can. And then let's return to Ibn Arabi's use of the term similitudes, just to finish this off. Let me see here. How about Linda Russell? For number 8.
But the most significant use of the root for the present context is probably the single occurrence of the word tamathul, which means to appear in the image of or to become imaginalized. Concerning Gabriel's appearance to Mary at the Annunciation, the Quran says, he became imaginalized to her as a man without fault. In the Hadith, the Prophet often employs this term, tamathul, and its near synonym, tamthil. For example, in a famous Hadith that became an important principle in the science of interpreting dreams, he says, Satan cannot become imaginalized in my image or in my form. And Mark picked that because I read that and I scratched my head. So please elaborate.
So most Muslims understood this last hadith to mean that whenever someone sees the prophet's image in a dream, it is truly his image and not a satanic deception. In another hadith, the prophet said, quote, the garden and the fire were imaginalized for me in this wall. So he actually saw it on a wall that he was going by. Okay, so that's what similitudes means. Let's take a look at the world of imagination as a whole. To summarize then, the verb imaginalize can be translated as to make a similitude, a divine activity that is documented in the Quran and the Baha'i writings. In fact, it even appears in the Old Testament in Hosea 12:10. But we don't yet have a clear idea of how imaginalization fits into Ibn Arabi's view of the world. How does he make sense of this type of action? In his cosmology, there are 3 worlds stacked on top of each other: the unseen, the imagination, and the visible. So the first handout, which I should stop sharing and then find for you, just hang on a second. These 3 presences, this one here. Maybe I should make that. There it is. Okay, this first handout shows the relations between these 3 presences. Then you have the Arabic term for each of them beside, and then the world that corresponds to each. So here's how he explains this 3-level model. Now we have to switch back over to reading number 9. And I have to find somebody to read that. How about Eva? Are you up for number 9? Eva.
I can't see the text again.
Oh, you can't see it.
I am excused.
Okay, fair enough. I'm gonna have to figure that out. See
Yeah.
what's going on there for you. Okay.
Mark, you're only screen sharing the three presences from what I can see here.
Oh, shoot.
Takes
Okay,
a lot
let
of
me try
back
it
and forth.
again. Sorry, let me try that again. I thought I had just switched from one screen to another, but apparently
Yeah,
not.
it's tricky.
Okay, let's try this. Can you see it now? Emma?
Yeah. Number 9.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
We say the world is two worlds, and the presence, Hadra, two presences. Even though a third presence is born between the two from their combination. Majmu,
Majmu.
Majmu.
Don't
The
worry
one-
about the Arabic. Just
Okay.
pass over the Arabic.
The one presence is the presence of the unseen. It has a word called the world of the unseen. The second presence is the presence of sense perception and of the visible. Its world is called the world of the visible. That which perceives this world is sight, while that which perceives the world of the unseen is insight.
Ah. So that's a direct quote from Ibn Arabi himself. So what's the product of these two then, the unseen and the visible? Ibn Arabi calls it the imagination. Okay, so I'm coming back to the beginning of my list. So is Zaid there today? Still online?
I think
David?
that's David.
David Anders?
Sorry, I just had to unmute myself.
Ah, okay.
So number 10 or number 11?
Yes, please.
Number
10.
What is born from the combination of these two presences is a presence and a world. The presence is the presence of imagination. The world of imagination. Imagination is the manifestation of meaning, ma'ani, in sensory frames. I'll have to get Kawalibhisia, sorry, such as knowledge in the form of milk, firmness in religion, in the form of a fetter, Islam is the form of a pillar, faith is the form of a handle, and Gabriel is the form of Diya al-Kalbi, in the form of a Bedouin and imaginalized Tama'atha Thul to marry, and as a man without fault. In the same way, a black color appears in the body of gall nuts and vitriol when the two are combined in the process of making ink, though they did not possess this quality when they were separated. Ibn Arabi Fatuhat al-Makiyah III, translated by William Chittick, towards sainthood, states and stations, the Meccan Revelations, volume 1, page 172.
That's very meticulous, David.
Wow.
So you don't have to worry about the Arabic. If you have some familiarity with it, as certain people in the audience do, that's great. But otherwise, just skip over the Arabic. Okay. So these manifestations in sensory frames, such as knowledge in the form of milk. These were similitudes that Muhammad actually used at different points as he was explaining things to people around him. Firmness in religion in the form of a fetter, Islam in the form of a pillar, faith in the form of a handle. Now, this fellow, Diha al-Kalbi, was a particularly good-looking man. So that was the form that Gabriel used when he appeared.
Okay.
And then Gabriel also appeared to Mary as a man without fault. So that last sentence is just saying, isn't it interesting that you take two things and then you put them together and something completely different from either of those two arises. So that's what's happening with the world of imagination, something that you wouldn't expect from either one of them on their own. It's a combination, if you like, of the world of God and the world of man. It's an intermediate stage. So each of these three worlds consists of different forms of nature. Let me see here.
Mark Jack has his hand up.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Yeah.
I can't see the, I'm going to close this. Sorry.
Mark, I'd like a clarification, please, of reading number 6, because it really caught my attention. Can you go back to that? It's the
yeah, I think I can. Just hang on.
It's the Fius Suluk 2. There's two Fius Suluk of the Bob. This is the second one.
Right.
So I'd like to know who's speaking to whom here. Is God speaking to the manifestation, or is the manifestation speaking to us? Because understanding who's speaking to whom here is going to determine the meaning of this passage, and I wasn't sure who was speaking to whom here. Because it makes an astounding statement. If it's the manifestation speaking to us, verily hath God created within thyself the similitude of all that he had fashioned in creation, that thou mayest not be veiled from any effulgence. That's a remarkable statement, just a cosmological statement, or is it God speaking to the Bob? I'm not clear on this.
I think if my memory serves me right, Jack, this particular quotation is taken out of context, so you don't hear all the answers that you're asking. But just reading it carefully, it seems to me that this is God talking to the Bob.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that would make sense, because otherwise it would be giving a gift to the human being, which is almost inconceivable to conceive, right? Yeah, okay.
You know, on the other hand, we're supposed to be able to reflect all the attributes of God.
That's true.
The human soul is supposed to be able to do that. So I don't think it's a far cry from either interpretation here.
Okay.
We rarely develop all that potential, but but we have it, and it's said over and over that we have it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we can understand a revelation to a degree.
Yeah.
If we couldn't, like my dog probably can't do it, but I can to a degree.
And it has to do with the third sentence there. He hath ordained that his home be the heart of his servant. To the degree that you have actualized that, become aware of the heart as Baha'u'llah means it, then I think you're probably able to do what you're just saying, Harold, to be able to reflect some of the effulgences that are shown to the manifestation. Just hang on a second. I'm getting notes here, chats. I'm having a hard time catching up with everything here. Okay, so Heather apparently has her hand up. That's what I'm seeing. Okay, Heather.
I'm looking at all of this, and it reminds me of some literature, like good literature, the world of the unseen, the world of imagination, and how this fills in with the arts.
So are you? I mean, David Erickson had made the point, I think, last week about William Blake, or was it 2 weeks ago? As an example of somebody who prized the imagination. Is that what you're referring to, but in a broader sense?
Yeah, and then it came to me as it's in a broader sense. But when I first was reading this, the things on the screen and looking at this, I was thinking of C.S. Lewis and the level of imagination and parables there are in his children's stories.
Interesting.
Like I've read all of the like The Magician's Nephew, not so much The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but some of the ones that came before that. And there is literature with high levels of parables in it, and it's just this is one I know.
Okay, I think it's a legitimate point you're making. Although there's going to be tremendous variables in terms of how religious those parables are.
Right. I mean, but C.S. Lewis was a practicing Christian. Like he also wrote Christian theology books as well.
He sure did. Okay. I think I want to go back to screen sharing here. Hang on. And I want to go back down to number 11. Okay. So, Paul or Bob, whichever you're referring to yourself tonight, how about number 11 for us? So each of these three worlds consists of different forms of nature.
Okay, got it. According to Ibn Arabi, the universe has three fundamental worlds. The highest is the world of the simple or the non-compound spirits, who are pure life, intelligence, and luminosity. The lowest is that of bodies, which are inanimate and compound or made of parts. The middle domain is the world of imagination, whose inhabitants are both simple and compound at the same time. Hence, they are totally different from either spirits or bodies. And through them, two sides are able to interrelate from the imaginal worlds.
Thank you. So as you know, the Baha'i faith also identifies three worlds in a similar sequence, but with critical differences, which we will explore in a later class. So in the Baha'i faith, they are God in his essence, the manifestations of God, and creation. Okay. The second handout includes the form of nature associated with all three presences in Ibn Arabi's model, and then adds the Baha'i model for the sake of comparison. So let me bring that up. All right, three levels of existence. Here we go. I'll just make that a bit smaller. Okay, so here you have Ibn Arabi on top. His three are the unseen, the imagination, and the visible, inhabited by the angels for the unseen, the jinn in the imagination, and the body of Adam, or human bodies, in the visible. And their natures are non-compound in the case of the unseen, both simple and compound in the imagination, and in our world, just straight compound. If you look at the Baha'i model, it's God in his essence, the manifestations of God and creation. God in his essence is the divinity, manifestations of prophethood, and creation is servitude. And again, the natures are the same. So I thought you'd find that a little bit interesting to compare the two. We're going to have something to say about this level here, manifestations of God, replacing the imagination. Okay, but not tonight. Okay, so let me see what we're doing here. What may not be apparent from the chart, well, maybe I should bring it back up. Sorry, I'm getting a little carried away with myself here. Okay, what might not be apparent from the chart of these two models is that spirit and body are not discrete and autonomous things. Instead of seeing them as separate worlds completely cut off from each other, Ibn Arabi viewed them as lying on a spectrum with fluid boundaries. Due to the imagination's intermediate position, the qualities of spirit and body, the two worlds it borders, which at first sight appear completely different, actually interpenetrate and intermingle. No absolute distinction should be made between them. Okay, let's see here.
Mark, Leslie has her hand up.
Ah, okay,
and then
and
Jack.
I see your hand. Okay, Leslie's first, please.
Mark, I'm just wondering where God is in Ibn Ali's model there.
In the unseen.
Where angels are?
Well, sorry, let me see. I'm just shuffling the wrong piece of the paper here. I got it here now. Okay. The unseen includes, now, I think in Ibn Arabi's case, he would say that God in his essence is off the chart. Okay. So when you start to make space on the chart, then you're talking about the unseen and you're talking about the angels, archangels, etc. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, Durham.
It was Jack next, Mark.
Oh,
Or did
okay.
Durham have his? Sorry, Durham, did you have your hand up?
He did. Yeah, I
Okay.
saw it.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Vergon. I'll come back.
Thank you. I just wanted to compare between the two models. See the big difference between the middle line where Ibn Arabi considered jinn,
yes,
which according to Islamic understanding, jinn is born or made of fire, it's a disobedient creature and so on, while in the Baha'i model, it's a completely different level of so I don't understand how he puts jinn in the middle, the imagination area. I mean, I'm sure this is what Ibn Arabi has put there, but to me, it's the jinn doesn't have this relationship like you have between the manifestation of God with God and the creation.
Mm-hmm.
In the Baha'i faith, we know this and you can accept it, but jinn itself, you know, I don't know how he looks at jinn as that connection between the upper and the lower level of existence.
Doesn't make sense to me either. But we are going to look at a 5-level model of his,
Mark,
which is closer to ours.
Mark, jinn is much bigger than just fire beings. That's a lot. Those are imaginary beings. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are neutral. That's what I understand. So those are like the word genie coming out of a bottle.
Yeah.
Is related to that. And so those are imaginal beings of many varieties, good and bad.
Fair enough.
Messengers between the realms, etc. I'm taking literary license to expand what they might mean so that they could mean something to us. Anyway, okay.
Durham, do you want to come back on that?
You see, in Islamic philosophy or understanding, angel, the body of Adam is made of earth. Jinn is made of fire. Angels are made of spirit. And in any way we read about jinns, I don't remember I've seen a positive jinn. They were always disobedient to any law that, starting from Iblis, who was the first one when Adam was created, God has asked the jinns to worship or bow to Adam. And Iblis, who's the father of jinns, he refused. So I don't remember seeing anything from jinn that's positive. Angels, yes, they come in all kind of different forms, 600-700 types. They're always good. Anyway.
Okay.
We'll see later maybe when.
So there's a limitation here, I think, in Ibn Arabi's model that we have already flagged now, which is great, by comparing it with the Baha'i one. But let's not completely dismiss him because his 5-level model is very close to the one that is accepted by Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha. So anyway, let's see where we're at. Now, Jack, you had a point.
I had a couple of points. I also don't like his model, but I will say this. that there is a tablet of Abdu'l-Baha. I don't think it's, some of the scholars have made a provisional translation. Mark, you may be aware of this, and he explains the meaning of jinn. And as I recall, and it's been a while since I read that, they all relate to the powers of the human being. Some are good and some are not good. Anyway, that's a separate point. But regardless of whether or not Ibn al-Arabi's model is accurate here, what I find useful about it, Mark, it's helped me to understand why in the imaginal realm there has to be a connection between us who are in the world of Nasut, the physical world, and that connection with the higher world of angels, because it's an intermediary between two worlds.
Correct.
So, for example, when people appear to us in dreams, they have to, I mean, they are spirits. They no longer have a body, but a physical body, but they have to appear to us in a way that, because we're still in the world of Nasut, right? The mortal world that we can understand. So so I think he's right about this both simple and compound thing. They're simple, but for us, they have to be compound for us to see them in the imaginal realm, right? Otherwise, we couldn't see them at all.
Correct.
So I have found this useful to help me understand how that intermediary world connects the higher world with the lower world. It has to be both. And whenever there's an intermediary that connects higher worlds and lower worlds, it has to have attributes of both worlds, which it clearly does in the Elami Mithal. It has attributes of both worlds.
Yep.
For example, I dreamt about my mother not long ago. I won't get into the whole thing, but what was remarkable about her was the way she was dressed. I didn't recognize her clothing. It looked medieval or some kind of nobility clothing. It was some kind of aristocratic clothing she was wearing, you know? So I think this was a symbol for me to try to understand something about her station where she is now. Anyway, it's that three levels helped me to connect something there. So thank you.
Okay, well, let's continue on with the readings then. I'm wondering if Christina, you could read number 12 for us.
Yes, sure. Number 13.
12.
Oh, 12, sorry.
That's right.
The word of imagination allows spirits to become embodied and bodies to become spiritualized. On the microcosmic level, our minds spiritualize the objects of the outside world simply by perceiving them. The spiritualized nature of this object become evident in the world of dreams, where we perceive sensory objects drawn from the outside world in a kind of never-never land between the inanimate matter of the corporal world and the living and luminous substance of the spirit.
So if I was to say the word tree, you would immediately come up with some image in your head, which might be a specific tree that lives outside your house. It could be something that you saw in Haifa. I mean, it could be one of a million trees. But you're seeing it in your imagination. You're not seeing it in the real world. So you're using your insight, not your sight, to access the imaginal world. That's the point here. Okay. So what we're doing is we're taking concrete physical reality, and we're spiritualizing it to a certain degree when we start thinking about stuff. So in both Islam and, let me, stop sharing first. Okay, in both Islam and the Baha'i faith, the three worlds interrelate in similar fashions. In Baha'i, humans do not have direct access to the essence of God. Consequently, the only way we learn about God is through the revelations brought to us by the manifestations of God. In Ibn Arabi's world, all messages emanating from the unseen realm must first descend through the imagination before they can be perceived in the visible realm. The imagination is thus a world of transition and two-way communication, lying as it does between the spiritual world and the physical world. The eminent French Orientalist Henri Corbin, who died in 1980, took great pains to ensure that we do not think of this world as imaginary in a derogatory sense. He coined the term imaginal to distinguish it from those things which exist only in the mind, which are not real. By contrast, the imaginal realm is completely real. In fact, more real than the physical world. It is fully autonomous. In other words, it exists regardless of whether or not we're aware of it. We humans visit the imaginal realm on a nightly basis in our dreams. Spiritually developed people may contact it while awake through visions. And in the end, we will all reside there after death, at least temporarily. In Ibn Arabi's cosmology, spirits have the capacity to materialize themselves on the earthly plane. As they descend through this intermediate level of existence, spirits such as the angel Gabriel clothe themselves in physical characteristics and garments appropriate for their intended audience. Judging from Muhammad's relaxed reaction to Gabriel's appearance, he must have been familiar with the angel from previous encounters. How else shall we account for his lack of surprise at the audacious questions he is asked? So, let's talk about discerning imaginal realities. Muhammad was able to detect Gabriel's true identity behind his beautiful imaginal form. His followers, however, were unable to see anything but a spotlessly clean Bedouin. Okay, so we need to switch back to screen sharing. And this is number 13. It's a bit long. Okay, how about Margaret? Number 13. I'll scroll as we go.
It is not always easy to tell the difference between an imaginal object and a sensory object. Although some people claim to experience the unveiling of luminous or fiery spirits, that is, angels or jinn, few of them know how they perceive what they perceive, nor do they know for certain the source of what they perceive. The Sheikh Ibn Arabi tells us that both the eye of imagination and the eye of sense perception function through the sense of sight. And the science of distinguishing between the perception of the two eyes is subtle. In fact, he says, this is one of the most difficult sciences to gain, and even many of the folk of God, the Sufis, do not have it. Nothing causes greater obfuscation in engendered existence than imaginations becoming confused with sense perception. If God gives a person the power of differentiation, then he clarifies affairs for him and shows him which eye he sees things with. Then he knows what they are, when he himself knows which eye he sees them with. The most necessary science for the folk of God to obtain is this science, but many of them pay no attention to what we have mentioned. From William Chittick, Imaginal Worlds.
So that was actually Ibn Arabi speaking.
Yes.
Thank you. That's good. So Ibn Arabi asserts that neither Muhammad's companions nor Jesus' mother possessed this difficult science of discernment. Here is his own statement on this particular form of blindness. Okay, Leslie Cole, how about you? 14.
Not all those who witness imaginalized bodies discern between these bodies and the bodies that are real in their view. That is why the companions did not recognize Gabriel when he descended in the form of the Bedouin. They did not know that the Bedouin was an imaginalized body until the prophet told them so, when he said that it had been Gabriel. They had not doubted that he was a Bedouin. The same was the situation with Mary when the angel imaginalized himself to her as a man without fault, because she had no mark by which to recognize spirits when they became embodied. This is Ibn Arabi, cited by William Chittick.
Okay. So he refers to it as a mark. Only those whom God has taught the mark that characterizes imaginalizations are able to spot their subtle deviations from physical reality. Let me see. How about Wayne? Number 15.
Yeah.
You able to see it?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
The Shaikh.
Yes.
The Shaikh tells us that this mark plays a fundamental role in the discerning the nature of imaginal operations. Without the mark, they have no way of discerning among the three types of created spirits that can manifest themselves in imaginal form. Those of angels, jinn, and human being.
Okay. Getting curious. So unless a person possesses this discernment, they can be easily fooled. Let me see here. How about David Erickson for number 16?
Okay. It is perhaps worth remarking here that unveiling is absolutely unreliable as a source of knowledge, so long as people are unable to perceive the marks and thereby discern the true nature of the experience. As the Shaykh tells us, every unveiling that is not unmixed, completely untainted by anything of the bodily constitution, cannot be relied upon unless the person already possesses the knowledge of the thing that takes form. No one but the prophets and the greatest friends of God can know who or what becomes embodied to them in imaginal form during a visionary encounter.
Okay, folks, it's time for our break to close this recording and start a new one. So we'll just take a minute.